rain settles over the neighborhood, brushing everything with the last faint color leaking from a washed out sky. The storm has long since walked away, yet the streets still hold its memory in darkened stone and cooled air. Lamps flicker on, casting golden pools that gather in the dips and cracks of the uneven pavement. I stand at the corner where two small roads meet, listening to the quiet negotiation between drying ground and drifting breeze. The scent rising now is softer than earlier, a gentle echo of soil leaves in distant gardens, letting go of excess water. Cars move slowly, tires whispering on the fading damp, careful not to disturb the shared calm. Windows open one by one, letting this tempered air slip into kitchens, humming with low conversation and clinking dishes. I feel the day's weight slide from my shoulders, dissolving like chalk under a thoughtful rain. All the tasks unfinished, messages unsent, and questions unanswered begin to seem like seeds rather than failures. This twilight aroma, born from contacts between water and waiting dust, turns my focus inward without shutting out the world. I breathe with the street, long and steady, letting patience pool within me the way droplets gather in sidewalk hollows. Every surface glows with a muted sheen, as if polished by invisible hands determined to reveal quiet details. I start walking home, guided more by the gentle pull of this grounded air than by habit. Behind me the corner fades into darkness, but its calm remains tucked beside my slow and thoughtful heartbeat. Tonight, as I open my notebook under a small lamp, the memory of wet stone and settling sky will keep me company, reminding me to move gently, listen closely, and begin again.
Beyond the last row of buildings, the fields stretch out, freshly soaked and steaming under a soft gray ceiling. Muddy paths snake between patches of grass, their edges crumbling gently where boots and wheels have recently passed. The scent here is thicker, almost sweet, full of turned earth, crushed stalks and rainwater, hiding in shallow grooves. I breathe in and feel my heart beat slow, sinking with some older rhythm, pulsing far below the visible ground. Birds comb the exposed soil, claiming tiny treasures released by the storm's careful hands. The tractor stands motionless near the fence, metal darkened, tires laced with clinging mud that tells of earlier struggles. The wind slides low over the damp land, carrying whispers of roots rearranging, seeds swelling and the stones finally cooling. My shoes gather a film of dirt that cracks slightly as I walk, leaving temporary maps behind. Distance, the city's shapes look softer, outlines blurred by lingering mist that still rises from the breathing fields. My usual worries seem misplaced out here, like paper receipts dropped in a river of patient time. Each inhale draws stories upward from the soil, tales of seasons stacked beneath my brief and passing footsteps. I imagine planting ideas, the way farmers trust unseen sprouts, burying them under layers of doubt and waiting. The storm has prepared this ground without asking permission, washing away dry, stubborn dust that refused to move. Standing still, I close my eyes and let the damp fragrance write calm instructions across my restless thoughts. When I finally turn back toward the road, the memory of this open, rain-fed space folds neatly into my chest, ready to unfold whenever concrete closes in again.
I climbed the narrow stairs to the rooftop, where last hour's cloudburst has polished every surface into muted silver. Puddles collect between cracked tiles holding upside down. Chimneys and antennae suspended in their trembling frames. The air tastes dense and kind, alive with dust finally loosened from hiding places behind bricks and vents. A faint warmth rises from the soaked concrete, meeting the cooler breeze that brushes against my damp sleeves. Far below, traffic resumes its steady pulse, but up here the sound is wrapped in distance and echo. I walk the edges, watching leftover drops slip from railings in slow intervals, each one a tiny farewell to the passing storm. The faint smell of wet metal chest mirror, the sky slow opening, tension draining through the soles of my shoes. Problems that felt overwhelming now lie scattered like rainwater, gathered into manageable pools around small imperfections in the surface. I kneel by one puddle and trace patterns without touching, letting my imagination stir ripples instead of my hands. The sense surrounding me is subtle yet persuasive, reminding my mind to lower its volume and listen more than it speaks. Every concern loses one layer of urgency, revealing a calmer shape underneath. I promise myself to remember this feeling when the next storm builds, both outside and within. For now, the rooftop stands as a simple sanctuary, washed, breathing, and wide enough to hold my scattered thoughts until they settle.
The storm has combed through the garden, leaving every leaf slicked back and quietly shining in the muted light. The soil along the path is darker now, rich and heavy, releasing a fragrance that feels older than any memory I own. Tiny rivers have carved new lines between stones, guiding droplets toward thirsty roots hidden beneath tangled stems. I step carefully to avoid fresh mud, yet secretly wish to feel it press between my toes, like when I was younger. The air is thick with the scent of broken stems, bruised herbs and awakened seeds, shifting under the surface. Spiders repair their webs between fence posts, each silk strand catching a trembling bead of water before letting it fall. The hum of the distant road has softened, replaced here by the quiet ticking of drops, leaving wide open leaves. My lungs expand more fully than they did yesterday, filled with a blend of chlorophyll, dust, and gentle decay. Every plant seems to be whispering with the ground, trading stories about droughts survived and clouds finally returning. I kneel beside a shallow puddle where reflected branches sway on an invisible breeze, creating worlds within worlds. My worries feel smaller in this damp cathedral of stems. stones.
Where time moves at the pace of growing things, I imagine each breath I take traveling downward, joining the moisture, soaking patiently into the waiting roots. Notes and tasks waiting on my desk, soften in my mind, becoming seedlings instead of towering trees. I stand up slowly, carrying this deep, earthy calm back toward the narrow house and its glowing screens behind me. The garden continues breathing its scent, following like a quiet guardian, promising that growth is already underway beneath every muddy footprint.
Train hums along wet tracks, carrying the last shivers of a storm towards some distant coastline. Outside, the window fields and parking lots shine with scattered pools, each one gathering leftover pieces of the sky. Water beats crawl sideways across the glass, racing gravity as the carriage leans through a broad, deliberate curve. The air inside smells faintly of fabric, metal, and the softened trace of rain guests dragged in earlier. I rest my forehead against the cool pane and feel vibrations blend with the memory of falling drops. Villages slide by, roofs still dark and gardens sparkling, where leaves hold tiny worlds upon their surfaces. Somewhere a river swells quietly under an old bridge, swallowing last night's intensity with patient practice calm. The sand sneaks in every time the door opens at small stations, carrying wet platforms, oil and deep breathing ground. Passengers murmur in low tones, their conversations blurred into one gentle current that never rises above the rhythm of wheels. My thoughts follow the rails, long lines stretching through soaked soil, unrolling paths I have not yet walked.
its closing chapter lingers in the air like a soft chorus. I imagine roots beneath passing fields, rearranging themselves, finding new routes for water, planning silent futures. Inside my notebook lies closed on my lap, yet ideas seep through anyway, like moisture through careful seams. Every kilometer adds another layer of calm, as if distance itself were wrung from clouds. By the time the sky begins to lighten, my breathing has synchronized with the steady clatter, and the scent of the world drying becomes a promise of gentler days ahead.
My notebook waits beneath the dim lamp, edges curling slightly from the heavy breath of recent rain. Outside, the world has lowered its volume, trading sharp clatter for softened rustles and distant dripping. I crack the window and feel a ribbon of cooled warmth slipping, carrying the grounded scent of wet soil and concrete. Each inhale feels like brushing dust from shelves in the back of my mind, revealing thoughts I misplaced weeks ago. The pages before me stop looking like demands and start resembling open paths, lightly traced in fading pencil, pen in hand. I tap to the rhythm of occasional drops falling from the roof onto the tired balcony rail. Birds test their voices somewhere in the gray branches, not yet bold but quietly confident that the storm has passed. My shoulders lower without permission, following the gentle pull of this honest, breathable air. Coffee cools beside my notes, sharing its space with the earthy taste sneaking through the window screen. I read the same sentence 3 times, yet each time gathers new meaning, washed clean of earlier impatience. The smell rising from the damp ground outside reminds me that everything sinks, rests, and then slowly rises again. Even my worries seem to have edges, softened by moisture, less jagged, more willing to be rearranged. I underline a phrase, write a small idea in the margin, surprised at how easily it appears. The room, once tight with expectation, now feels like a quiet harbor where thoughts can dock without crashing. Somewhere between one drip and the next, studying becomes less of a battle and more of a slow, steady conversation. Neither downpour hammered every dark corner, but now the city do softly under thinning clouds and lingering mist. Neon signs smear across the shiny asphalt, stretching themselves into wobbling colors that barely recognize their own shapes. The usual harshness of traffic is gone, replaced by distant engines sliding cautiously over the polished ground. I walk along the emptied avenue, my footsteps absorbed by a pavement still drinking from 1,000 restless drops. Above, windows stand like sleepy eyes, curtains half drawn, watching without judgment as the world resets. The air carries the scent of damp brick, rusted railings, paper cups, and city dust, finally given a chance to breathe. Even the alleyway dumpster smells somehow less cruel, framed by steaming vents and quiet puddles, guarding their secrets. A lone tram glides past, its lights flickering along metal tracks, now dark and slick and strangely dignified. Back and let the softened breeze touch my face, tasting of ironstone and tired electricity. Thoughts that felt loud yesterday now move in slower loops, as if echoing through a wet tunnel lined with moss. Every surface reflects something else, turning corners into small infinity pools of diluted turquoise and fractured moonlight. Somewhere a bar door closes, laughter quickly swallowed by the generous hush left behind by the receding storm. I follow the curve of the road until the smells of rain and fuel braid into a single comforting thread. With every breath my chest untangles, releasing the tight knots of deadlines, messages, and unanswered expectations. By the time the clouds part slightly, revealing a faint forgiving glow, the city and I feel equally rinsed. The air outside the old house would always thicken after heavy summer rain, full of secrets rising from the beaten ground. I remember bare feet on the back steps, the cold of wet stone pressing stories into my skin. Puddles gathered around the crooked tree roots, framing them like small lakes where fallen petals sail slow, heroic journeys. Somewhere in the distance, somebody's radio cracked through static, playing a melancholy song that never reached the chorus. The sky stayed low and silver, yet the garden seemed brighter, each leaf
sharpened by leftover drops clinging to its edges. I would scoop handfuls of damp earth, never daring to keep them, only feeling the weight and letting them slide away. That scent of wet dust and leaves wrapped around everything, turning even broken toys into artifacts worth saving. Inside, books waited on the table, pages waving gently in the thickened breeze, slipping through the half-open door. I learned that silence after rain was not empty. It echoed with roots, worms, and forgotten seeds, shuffling into new positions. Even the old fence stopped creaking, as if listening to the soft applause of dripping branches. Years later in another city, I open a window after a storm and suddenly stand again on those stairs. The same gentle warmth rises from the ground, carrying chalk marks, scraped knees, lost marbles, and promises whispered into crack flower pots. My adult worries shrink for a moment, outnumbered by the patient memories stored in every grain of soil. I breathe in slowly, letting that invisible bridge span time, connecting homework pages then and now. The rain has finished speaking, but its last words still hang in the air, kindly reminding me how long roots remember. Sidewalk stones shine like quiet mirrors where the storm forgot a few scattered memories. Thin pools reflecting wires and washed out sky. I walk between them, counting each step like a metronome, letting the rhythm guide my breathing back into pattern. My shoes kiss the water's surface, not quite splashing, only sending little ripples trembling toward fallen leaves. Street lights click off one by one, embarrassed to still be awake after the gray morning finally arrives. Somewhere behind clouds, the sun tests the edges, not bright enough to break through, but warm enough to loosen the chill. The air tastes mild and heavy, carrying soil, concrete, and the softened edges of yesterday's noise. Bicycles roll past, their tires hissing gently on the wet road, like secrets exchanged between old friends. A small dog shakes itself dry at a doorway, droplets catching the dim light before disappearing into the cool dust. I feel my thoughts settle to the pace of my feet. No faster, no slower, just steady. The city after rain is not dramatic or loud, but honest. Its flaws blurred, its colors blend kindly together. I imagine every raindrop that fell last night, each one touching a different story, a different waiting seat. Now all that remains is this tender stillness, a shared pause between strangers rushing toward their ordinary days. I carry it with me like a quiet song in my pocket, almost silent, but ready whenever the world becomes too sharp. With every careful step around a shallow pool, I choose balance instead of speed, noticing instead of escaping. By the time I reach my door, the damp air has washed something invisible from my shoulders, leaving only room to grow. I sit beside the open window as the last drops slowly fade, and the world takes one long, relieved and quiet breath. The glass is freckled with drying circles, little ghosts of water clinging, tracing stories that dissolve back into the air. Somewhere a car passes through a shallow puddle, but even that sound feels wrapped in soft wool, muffled and kind. The sky is colorless yet gentle, a pale curtain stretching carefully over every crooked rooftop, every tangled wire, every lonely chimney. I follow the sound of leftover drips slipping from the eaves, slow and irregular, like a heartbeat that finally trusts it can rest. The earth below exhales upwards, sending a warm, familiar scent that curls around my thoughts and settles my racing mind. I think of pages waiting on my desk, underlined sentences, quiet questions. I keep postponing until the world calms down. Now the outside has surrendered its noise, and even my doubts speak in a softer voice, almost whispering instead of shouting. I picture roots stretching under the soaked ground, drinking in the last of the storm, rearranging themselves for another patient season. The air tastes newly washed, yet seasoned with dust. Stone leaves all the small histories that usually hide from sight. I inhale slowly, as if breathing in the color of wet bark and dim clouds, letting it paint over the sharp edges inside. Nothing extraordinary happens, no revelation arrives, no promise, no sudden change. But every understated detail seems to lean closer, offering a seat inviting me to stay, listen, and quietly begin again.